Good day, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. The video that you have just watched illustrates the countless journeys that immigrants made and continue to make to come to Canada. It may have reminded you of your own family story. De la part du Conseil d'administration du Musée canadien d'immigration du Quai 21, j'aimerais vous souhaiter la bienvenue à notre réunion publique annuelle. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and staff of Pier 21, I'd like to welcome you to our annual public meeting for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2020. Therefore, most of what we will be relating refers to that long ago era before the pandemic. As you may know, traditionally every second year, the museum holds its annual public meeting in a different location across the country. This year, we had planned to meet in my hometown of Winnipeg, Manitoba. However, due to COVID-19 and restrictions on travel and gatherings, we have moved the event online and are coming to you from both Winnipeg and the Museum of Immigration at Pier 21 in Halifax. With this in mind, I wish to acknowledge that the museum is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Similarly, I would like to acknowledge that Winnipeg is on Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. It is in the spirit of their welcome that I greet you all today. We are all very fortunate to share this land we call Canada. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi de reconnaître et de remercier ceux qui rendent possible cet incroyable musée aujourd'hui. Recueillir, préserver et partager des histoires d'immigration, des voyages, des arrivées, d'établissements et d'impact est bien sûr notre raison d'être. Et nous ne pourrions pas faire connaître ces histoires sans le généreux soutien du gouvernement du Canada, pour lequel nous sommes très reconnaissants. Le musée génère des revenus supplémentaires grâce à la vente de billets, aux frais de location, sa boutique, la philanthropie et d'autres sources. Ces fonds permettent d'offrir les services et les programmes supplémentaires que nos visiteurs apprécient et auxquels ils s'attendent. En 2019-2020, les recettes générées par le musée s'élevaient à un peu plus de $3 million. Thank you to each and every one of our individual corporate and foundation donors. Your generous support allows the museum to offer the amazing programs and experiences for our visitors of all ages. I would like to extend an extra special thank you to our donors who have joined us on the call today. Nous vous remercions pour les briques que vous avez achetées, les adhésions au Club de Quai 21, les programmes que vous avez commandités, et tout ce que votre générosité continue de rendre possible au Musée canadien d'immigration du Quai 21. I would like to recognize the management team of the museum, its staff and volunteers, led by our wonderful CEO, Murray Chapman. Félicitations à vous tous et toutes, et merci infiniment. And finally, I would like to personally acknowledge the work of my colleagues on the Board of Trustees. Their commitment and stewardship serve the museum so well. Collectively, staff, management, and our Board of Trustees bring to life our vision of connecting Canadians to our immigration history, past and present. Thank you. Merci. And as my First Nations neighbors would say, miigwech. And now over to our CEO, Murray Chapman.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for your unwavering leadership and support of the museum. The museum's mandate is to explore the theme of immigration to Canada in order to enhance public understanding of the experience of immigrants as they arrived in Canada, of the vital role immigration has played in the building of Canada, and the contributions of immigrants to Canada's culture, economy, and way of life. En tant que musée d'histoire, nous recueillons des histoires orales et des récits personnels. Les histoires que nous partageons ne sont pas uniquement celles de quelques millions d'immigrants qui sont passés par la porte d'entrée du Canada au Quai 21. Elles représentent également la diversité des nouveaux arrivants qui ont choisi de s'installer au Canada des premiers contacts à aujourd'hui. It is my pleasure to share with you some of the highlights from 2019-20. This past year, again, saw very strong visitation. 132,507 visitors and students experienced the museum in person last year, while over 489,000 unique visitors spent time on our website learning about our programs, stories, and collections. I'm also very pleased to be able to share that we achieved a 95% visitor satisfaction rate during our annual survey. This means is 95% of those surveyed would highly recommend or recommend to others to come and visit the museum. L'année passée a en effet été une autre année remarquable pour le Musée canadien de l'immigration du Quai 21. Le musée semblait sur le point d'atteindre un nombre record de visites. En septembre, notre élan s'est ralenti lorsque nous avons dû fermer notre port pendant 3 jours au cours de notre haute saison à cause de l'ouragan Dorian. Puis le COVID-19 a fermé notre port à nouveau le 14 mars. Cette deuxième fermeture nous a amenés, comme le reste de la communauté muséale, à réexaminer comment nous communiquons avec notre public à la maison et de la maison lorsqu'il n'était plus possible de se déplacer pour nous rendre visite en personne. I'm proud to report that our team acted swiftly in response to the pandemic. Many changes, both short and long-term and everlasting, were implemented in the weeks and months that followed. 2 major projects planned for 2019-20 were close to completion and helped address this need. With the help of 2 amazing hosts, Kim Thuy and Mark Sakamoto, the first season of our podcast was completed to bring our inspiring immigrant stories to new audiences across the country and beyond. Je vous laisserai vous en dire un peu plus au sujet du balado.
Hi, I'm Mark Sakamoto. I'm the host of Countless Journeys. I am a broadcaster, an author, a tech entrepreneur, a daddy, and a big fan of the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21. My family's immigration story actually started on the West Coast. Toru Ozeki, my great-grandfather, was one of the first Japanese Canadians to come over from Japan and fish and create a life. And like the folks that walked through Pier 21, I think he came with a lot of excitement and a lot of trepidation. It was a brand new and very different world. But he made a go of it, and I think, like most of the folks that walked through Pier 21, made it a better place. The first season of Countless Journeys, produced by the museum, is going to connect Canadians to personal stories of immigration from past to present, from coast to coast. Stories like Dr. Tran Davies, who lives in Alberta and is a physician. She cares for about 1,500 patients a year. She came here at the end of the Vietnam War at the age of 5, with her siblings and her single mother. Dr. Davies, her life came full circle, and she led a group of Albertans that sponsored 2 Syrian families at the end of the Syrian War. These are the kinds of stories of struggle and hope that we really are trying to bring to the fore. I really hope that you tune in and give these stories a listen. They're heartwarming and heartbreaking and full of what really has made Canada what it is. Listeners can find the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or podcast.pier21.ca for more information.
Je m'appelle Kim Thuy et je suis écrivaine. Je suis née au Vietnam et à l'âge de 10 ans, j'ai quitté avec ma famille en bateau. Donc nous étions des boat people qui sommes arrivés en Malaisie. On a vécu environ 4 mois dans un camp de réfugiés avant d'être sélectionnés par le Canada. Et quand on est arrivé, on nous a envoyés à Granby, au Québec, parce que mes parents parlaient déjà français. Et moi, j'ai appris le français d'ici. Le balado d'Innombrables Voyages nous permet d'entendre l'histoire de différentes personnes qui sont arrivées ici au Canada. Chacun a une histoire unique, une façon différente d'arriver au Canada. J'ai eu la chance d'enregistrer quelques histoires. L'histoire, par exemple, d'une sculpteur qui est d'origine libanaise, qui est arrivée en Vancouver. et puis une autre histoire d'amour entre deux jeunes correspondants adolescents et qui se sont retrouvés et se sont mariés et aujourd'hui vivent au Nouveau-Brunswick et parlent le français acadien. C'est magnifique, non? Et aussi une histoire d'amour entre deux hommes qui se sont rencontrés à Toronto. Ces histoires illustrent vraiment la richesse de notre pays, comment on s'est construit à travers le temps, durant plus de 100 ans maintenant, et ça nous raconte nous. Le balado d'innombrables voyages se trouve sur iTunes. Alors, vous pouvez y aller et choisir. Sinon, les informations sont sur balado.k21.ca.
If you haven't discovered these already, I encourage you to subscribe wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'm also very pleased to be able to tell you that our second season will be released in the spring of 2021. Last year, members of our team were extremely busy with the final edits of Pier 21, A History. This comprehensive and definitive book is the first history of Pier 21 written by staff, co-published with the Canadian Museum of History and the University of Ottawa Press. I'd like to share two short videos by co-author Dr. Jan Raska talking about the book.
My name is Jan Raska and I'm a researcher here at the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21. Welcome to Pier 21 A History. Over the next 5 episodes, we'll touch on what it was like to immigrate to Canada through this important ocean immigration facility. Well, in 2016, we realized that there was a major gap in terms of our knowledge of Pier 21 as a site of immigration, as a former ocean immigration shed. And we realized that we needed to do more research to come up with a better idea, a better understanding of the experience of immigrants coming through the site, but also of the people who volunteered and who actually worked here. And so over the course of a few years, my colleague Steve Schwinghammer and I visited different archival institutions, obviously delved into our own collection as well, and looked at some of the oral histories and archival documents and stories that we have here at the museum. And we realized that there was a vast and rich story that needed to be told and brought to Canadians. I think what surprised me the most was the diversity of voices. Oftentimes we hear that there's an official narrative in terms of how people come to Canada, what their arrival experience is like. And by looking at, for example, oral histories or stories within our collection, we soon realized that everybody's experience of coming to Canada is quite unique. And in a lot of cases, their actual account or their experience of coming to Canada upends or problematizes what we know officially of the Canadian immigration experience. So I picked this particular reading because I wanted to give people an insight in terms of the personal connections to this former immigration facility. These memories of Pier 21 are wide-ranging. The ship's arrival, the assembly room, the small baggage check, the confiscated goods, the Canadian food, boarding the train, and the waiting, uncertainty, and anticipation. For Canadian soldiers going to war in Europe, and for the families of those who did not come back, Pier 21 hosts a completely different set of memories. We know of these divergent memories from written testimonials, oral history interviews, and information derived from personal objects. Together, they form a key component of this work. We hope to give these memories better context by developing a deeper picture of the history of Pier 21 as a place. Les personnes détenues au quai 21 pendant les fêtes passaient leur temps en créant des spectacles, en créant des loisirs pour leur famille, pour leurs enfants. En août 1948, les réfugiés lettons, lituaniens, finlandais, polonais et ukrainiens sont arrivés sur la côte est du Canada. Bon nombre de ces mêmes personnes ont utilisé leur économie pour payer leur voyage au Canada à bord d'un des navires de transport. Par exemple, les passagers de SS Walnut ont quitté la Suède où il était menacé de rapatriement forcé en Union soviétique. Il avait essayé de s'établir au Canada, mais ils étaient frustrés par les longs délais et les obstacles au traitement des demandes d'immigration au Canada. Ils ont été détenus à leur arrivée le 13 décembre 1948 et ont fait l'objet d'un traitement spécial. Presque tous les réfugiés ont été acceptés au Canada, même si 2 personnes ont été expulsées pour des raisons de sécurité. Les autres réfugiés baltes ont été forcés de passer la période des fêtes dans les quartiers de détention du quai 21. Maintenant, je voudrais lire un extrait du livre sur les fêtes en détention. Les détenus utilisaient l'aire de loisirs pour organiser des divertissements s'ils étaient présents lors d'une fête nationale, comme ce fut le cas des passagers du SS Walnut pendant la période de Noël en 1948. Hans Lepik, un passager de 14 ans, s'en souvient encore. Nous avons organisé des fêtes de Noël. L'armée du salut, je m'en souviens, a apporté des cadeaux et c'était bon d'être enfant. En plus des fêtes de Noël, tout le monde était heureux que nous soyons arrivés. Moi, j'avais hâte de partir, de trouver du travail. Et maintenant, je voudrais continuer avec un autre extrait du livre sur le cas des réfugiés cubains en détention au quai 21. Durant l'hiver 1964, les réfugiés cubains, les agents d'immigration canadienne et les organismes bénévoles se sont réunis pour fêter Noël à la façon traditionnelle cubaine pour tous les enfants en détention. Ils ont construit un hôtel avec des caisses d'œufs, l'on recouvre d'une nappe blanche provenant de la cuisine et ont décoré un arbre de Noël pour l'occasion. Les réfugiés cubains ont ainsi organisé une fête de Noël avec un dîner et des cadeaux pour tous les participants, dont environ 14 enfants et 24 femmes. Le Père Noël a également visité le groupe. Il était joué par une des réfugiés pour que les enfants puissent le comprendre en espagnol, leur langue maternelle.
L'année dernière, nos expositions temporaires et nos programmes publics ont une fois pour le plus contribué à relier les Canadiens avec notre histoire d'immigration. L'exposition itinérante actuelle du musée Refuge Canada, présentée par le groupe financier de la Banque TD, a contribué à étendre davantage notre portée dans tout le pays. Elle a commencé sa tournée nationale à Brampton, en Ontario, et s'est ensuite rendue à Medicine Hat, en Alberta, puis à Nanaimo, en Colombie-Britannique. While we were sending our exhibit to the West Coast was coming east. In partnership with the Royal BC Museum, Family Bonds and Belonging, presented by Scotiabank, was installed in the Ralph and Rose Kyoto Gallery from March until November of 2019. This popular exhibition asked, "What makes a family?" Some significant local content was added to the exhibition for its Halifax installation to help answer this question. This included photos from Africville, a beadwork jacket worn by the Grand Chief of the Mi'kmaq Nation, John Knoll, in the late 1880s, a profile of the Nova Scotia cricket team looking at family by choice, as well as more immigration-related content such as visitor favorite, the story of family member Sugar the dog who immigrated to Canada with his family from the Philippines. Last year, we also created an exhibition in partnership with the Jamaican Cultural Association of Nova Scotia. Hosted in the Morella and Lino Saputo Hall, this Community Presents project, Jamaican Nova Scotian Connections, celebrated the oldest Jamaican community in Canada. And I can tell you, we celebrated that night with the community. There was dancing, beautiful stories, and we really enjoyed the time and fellowship together at the museum. Plus de 12 500 personnes ont participé à nos programmes publics. Parmi ceux-ci, mentionnons notre série de films Plein Feu sur la diversité, des célébrations spéciales pour Diwali, un nouvel an lunaire et la Fête du Canada. Nous nous sommes également associés au Théâtre Neptune pour célébrer le retour à guichet fermé de la pièce de théâtre de renommée internationale de Hannah Moscovitch intitulée Old Stock, A Refugee Love Story. inspiré en partie par une visite au musée et une découverte au Centre d'histoire familiale de la Banque Scotia. In February, our Canada Storyteller series welcomed back Essie Adujan. Essie talked about her most recent and highly acclaimed book, Washington Black. Holocaust survivors Pinchas Gooder and Sol Nyman shared their experiences with students and the public during 2019's Holocaust Education Week. It was harrowing to hear Pinchas recount with his photographic memory the details of a 10-year-old boy being separated from his family forever and his terrifying ordeal that followed. After living in many countries around the world, Pinchas finally traveled to Canada. In describing his first visit to Toronto, he said, "I'd never thought about living in Canada, but when I walked around the city, I felt such a freedom with every breath I took. It was the most humane place I'd ever been. This is a magnificent place to live, I thought, and decided we should move here." And move here he did. Just one of the countless journeys that we honor at the museum. I should tell you that was also an incredibly memorable day for me at the museum. And there are many of them, but Holocaust Education Week always brings to us remarkable stories, and you can hear a pin drop when the students listen to them. It's really amazing. Connecting Canadians to these stories is an ongoing and evolving process. Starting next week, renovations will begin on one of our exhibitions. The planning and design for this project has been underway for several years, and this winter the museum will close to the public to complete the work. It's actually taking place in the Canadian Immigration Hall, which is where I'm sitting right now talking to you. I invite you to return to the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21 at a time when it's prudent to do so, to enjoy this inspiring new installation honoring the contributions of immigrants to our culture, economy, and way of life. This and the many other ways we engage with our visitors would not be possible without the support of our donors, our partners, and the Government of Canada. Thank you. Thank you very much. This concludes the formal portion of our annual public meeting for 2019-20. We will now open the floor for questions. Nous commencerons maintenant la séance de questions. Merci and au revoir.